Hello and welcome. Beginning the week with your comments and questions. Just a few to look at. To begin with, someone asked if the universe responds to our beliefs. And I don't think this is a question coming directly from Buddhist practice or about Buddhism. But in one sense the answer is yes, and in another the answer is no. The universe itself, as we understand it scientifically, is just a whole bunch of aggregates, elements, much like our own so-called selves, or wrongly perceived as selves. The word in Pali for that is Sakkaya Ditthi, personality view. That is believing that these aggregates, these elements that make up these physical bodies, and even our thinking brains are what we are, whereas what that is impermanent, unsatisfactory, and out of our control, anicca, dukkha, anatta, is experienced through vijnana, sense consciousness, what we see, hear, smell, taste, touch, all of our experience externally, and that we perceive of such, think about, create mental formations, sankhara, the Pali word, in our thinking brains. But separate from that is citta, mind. The aggregates, the five aggregates of this physical body and thinking brain are nama rupa. Citta, that is rupa, form, nama, sense consciousness, thinking, thought, perception, mental formations, whereas citta, on the other hand, mind, is that which observes, that witnesses that. Not of this conditioned world, but to some extent conditioned by it, by our actions of body, speech and mind. When we come to understand that, we appreciate the meaning of the word karma, which means just action, the results of which in Pali vipaka are as a result of causes and conditions we put in place. In other words, every action has a reaction, cause and effect. And in that sense, the universe of course, does respond to all of our actions of body, speech and mind in its association with us. So within our immediate environment, our actions will have consequences. And our immediate environment is part of the universe. So we don't in Buddhism have this concept of manifestation or asking the universe for its assistance or some fatalistic idea of what the universe is dictating or predicting for us in terms of our experience. But better than that, and whether that is true or whether it is not, we understand that our actions of body, speech and mind will have consequences, cause and effect, directly. Reap what you sow, do good, good will happen, do bad, bad will happen. That's a scientific an explanation to that idea as there can possibly be, but also very simple and very easy to understand way of knowing karma, having right view with regards to this is the first step of the Noble Eightfold Path with regards to karma, and that all we do will have its consequences, and of that this physical body and this thinking brain is not the personality, is not indeed even that which is reborn. So it is not reincarnation, it is a rebirth for a new vehicle, a new form. The mind can use as its vehicle for developing these qualities towards freedom from suffering within this lifetime as we're experiencing it now, liberation from rebirth into this cycle of birth, aging, sickness and death. This is what we're practicing. We know that this physical body, as it is, deteriorates as it gets older and starts falling to bits or not working efficiently, has no further use after this lifetime. As with this thinking brain, whatever we put into it information-wise, that information can soon be lost through either illness or just simply old age, but ultimately through death. But the causes and conditions we use this physical body and this thinking brain to put into place within this lifetime will remain. The consequences, the results will remain of those actions. And that is, in terms of right view, the two of the main aspects of right view, the understanding of karma and the understanding of samadhi, which is the right understanding of our personality, as opposed to the wrong understanding, sakkaya ditthi, that we are of this form and this nature. The first comment here is, can I talk or share some wisdom on coping with separation and divorce? You'd be interested to understand if it's the same as mindfully dealing with suffering as per the practice. So, dukkha, suffering, we understand. All things, all conditioned things are impermanent, and this is moving on to another aspect of the first stage of the Noble Eightfold Path, right view, and that is that there are these three characteristics of existence: anicca, impermanence; dukkha, suffering; and anatta, not self, as we've just talked about. When we understand all things are impermanent, then we clearly see that that applies to not only physical aspects of our lives that we associate with, material possessions, as well as our physical bodies and even our thinking brains, but that too is with regards to emotions and relationships. So our associations, our connections with others in this lifetime of experience. And divorce is, marriage in itself is very much just of this conditioned world, but a convention and one of varying interpretations over time, history, and even to this day geographically in meaning. And divorce is just the end of that contractual agreement, contractual obligation, just looking at it at its most materialistic sense. Of course, there are much deeper values in the meaning of marriage and the bonds of relationships and the coming together of two people with determination and commitments to the rest of their lives through sickness and health and richer and poorer and so on and so forth. But these are just conventional ideas that we've become used to in the Western world as a way of binding ourselves to another in a relationship. But by no means does this add any sense of permanence to that relationship. However well you get on in this relationship, however long it lasts, one of you at some point will get old, will get sick, will die. We will be parted from those we love, as those we love will be parted from us. This stands to reason. This is the truth. This is something that we have to understand. We know. So divorce is just where this relationship breaks down irrevocably, and at that point is considered and legally dissolved, that relationship. But that aside is by the by. The suffering comes as a result of just not appreciating that, well, the relationship, it's past its time, it's come to an end, it's now over, and not being able to let go, because you may be the party, the one whom wanted the relationship to continue. And in that sense, you haven't got something you want. So this is just getting down back to the very basics of Buddhism. You're suffering as a result of not having what you want, or you're getting something that you don't want, which is in this sense the freedom, the opportunity to be independent, to have solitude in your life. And you won't be looking at those positive aspects because you are suffering as a result of a kind of grieving for your partner, having seemingly lost them, whether it's through just breakdown of the marriage or to another. However, it is, with time, something you get over. Now, how do we deal with it? Do we deal with it mindfully? We deal with it through having developed on the path, through the practice, wisdom. I talk of sila, moral virtue, samadhi, meditation, leading to panya, wisdom. And panya wisdom is understanding and having a full understanding or comprehension, knowledge of, but not just intellectually, but really understanding and putting it into practical applications. That of, firstly, Sakkaya Ditthi or personality view, having been able to abandon that, a full understanding of anicca, dukkha, anatta, impermanence, unsatisfactoriness, and things being out of our control, and of karma, that is, all of our actions have results. That is wisdom. That is also right view. With all that in place, one can be quite matter of fact in terms of divorce. So it's not so much a case of samasati, right mindfulness, as one applies to all of our daily activities and all of our both physical feelings and mental emotions. Yes, we're mindful of them. But it's application of wisdom. This is where the difference is between being able to apply wisdom and just know wisdom. So prior to talking this morning, I was reading through the emails, which normally fills me with a lot of joy and happiness, just responding to your questions about meditation, about Buddhism, and about other matters. Occasionally, very occasionally, I get an email from my little nickname for a generalized category of correspondence is those that come from Professor Dharma. And in my world, Professor Dharma is the intellectual Buddhist. And one finds in Buddhist countries and in the West that there are a group of intellectual Buddhists whom, from my experience, are not actually practitioners. They may abide by many devotional practices, be involved in many organizations, and very well learned. Most often, more often than not, and certainly in India, there's a whole group of lay practitioners called, they have a name for them, I've forgotten. Oh, Dharmacharyas. So basically Dharma teachers, whom are more qualified, and they are by way of qualification as well, and educated and have a better understanding of the Tipitaka, the Vinaya Pitaka, the Suta Pitaka particularly, and the Abhidharma also particularly, than most practitioners, and including the Sangha, most ordained monks and nuns, because they've made it their life's work admirably, and I am grateful for their support of the Sangha, to studying of the suttas and studying of the Abhidharma, and in this sense have a basket of facts to hand, readily available, to answer any question. This is the beauty of the Dharma. The Buddha gives all of these talks in the suttas which contain the answers to all questions. But rather than the answers to all questions being simple, in that one could say that all questions can be answered by either practice, sila, samadhi, panya, or that they are subject to the characteristics of existence, anicca, dukkha, anatta. That simply can answer most questions. But the suttas are particularly expansive upon those ideas behind that and can be used to quote for certain situations and to answer certain situations. And for that reason, monks in Buddhist countries are required to learn a lot of specific suttas off by heart in the Pali language and be able to recite them to apply to certain situations. A very common one is the Kalama Sutta, which is one that's expected to be known more or less off by heart for all monks ordaining in Sri Lanka, which is not the case for, or a requirement for ordination elsewhere particularly, but is often seen as a basis for a Buddhist monk's understanding. But that is on an intellectual level, that they can quote a sutta. I can quote from such a sutta to say in my own language that Sakkaya Ditthi is wrong view and it's coming from a place of ignorance, focusing on form. But this is just quoting words. It isn't demonstrating an understanding. So coming from the background tradition that I've been practiced and trained in and experienced through most of my Buddhist life, it has been an experience that's been developed through renunciation and through practice, rather than through education and through study. And in that sense, when it comes to having wisdom, when you've established through actual practice of developing with each circumstance, including your divorce, how you react, how you deal with it, and yes, mindfully understanding, feeling and seeing all feelings, physical feelings as well as emotional feelings, arising and passing away, and so on and so forth. You can come to understand fully the nature of these characteristics of existence and look at it more logically. On a practical level, with practice, you can simply walk away. But if you haven't practiced, however much intellectual knowledge you have, you may be able to recite the entire Sutta Pitaka, but that won't help you deal with your divorce. But if you're able to just walk away and renounce worldly life, as in ordain as a bhikkhu or ordain as a bhikkhuni, then you are, by demonstration, by example, divorcing yourself from the world, from worldly life. Not escaping, you're going away to face all of your physical difficulties and mental difficulties head on. But you're divorcing yourself from the comforts, the distractions, the support of that worldly life, that worldly experience. And that is true nekkhamma, renunciation, a quality that we are developing. One of the factors of enlightenment that, or one of the parami, in fact, leading towards the factors of enlightenment that enable us to attain to the first stages of enlightenment, being able to completely understand and therefore be abandoning this idea of personality view, Sakkaya Ditthi, form, letting go of that, and its attachments to all supportive structures that we associate it with it by way of convention in worldly life. So one can't just simply say, well, you deal with divorce by knowing it's impermanent, unsatisfactory and out of your control. We know that logically. But through the practice over time, and with mindfulness, like you quite rightly say, you develop that understanding, that knowledge. Now, it's hard to convey in an email to Professor Dharma on these occasions when I receive such emails, which largely are volumes of words containing very few questions and veiled criticisms of my speaking this way, simply in terms of Dharma. And in order to reply respectfully to such education and people who've committed their lives to an understanding intellectually of the Dharma, it's very hard not to cause offence. So if Professor Dharma's listening, I hope I haven't caused offence, but please know I'm talking to the majority of people via this means whom just want to hear plain English and application of Dharma. Not 50% a language they don't understand, say Pali verse, followed by a translation which, when translated literally in our mother tongue English, doesn't make a lot of sense, but simply the application of that wisdom, the knowledge, the teachings of the Buddha, the Dharma, to our everyday lives. So I asked politely Professor Dharma to direct his comments and questions via means of email to those members of the Sangha of his or her own country, where they are educated to respond in that way and not come across as trite or rude, as I might do. Because my answer, anicca, dukkha, anatta, all conditioned things, is considered a standard rote answer by such people as Professor Dharma. However, it's the truth, that is the answer, and that the Buddha gave in the Kalama Sutta to the tribe of skeptical intellectual people whom only wanted to throw at his feet criticism. Well, why are you right and other teachers coming along, they say they're right? He is saying it primarily in that sutta because all I'm asking you to do is practice for yourselves and see by experience how the truth, the Four Noble Truths, manifests itself, and how the path leading to the end of suffering, the Noble Eightfold Path, enables you to see this clearly through keeping precepts, the practice of meditation, and the development of wisdom. Now I will invite Professor Dharma from wherever you are to come and spend a day, 2 days, 3 days in your own accommodation, which I'm sure you're able to find for yourselves, but just meditating with me, just sitting in samadhi for the whole day, where you can see the truth of this practice, the answers of this practice, without knowing a word of Pali or knowing any of the suttas. And then you will know the true meaning of the word monk, which just means someone living alone, dedicated to their religion, the English word monk. But that's not used here. There's many words used, but bhikkhu in the Pali, which also isn't really used here. They use bhikshu, but bhikkhu, Pali word, is a homeless wanderer, mendicant, many of whom throughout ages, and certainly including myself, are not educated, are not intellectuals, are just practitioners, meditators, leading a very simple life that the majority in modern society and ancient society, all times, from the time of the Buddha, find very difficult. Why? Because of their defilements, their Mara, the manifestation or personification rather, the personification of greed, hatred and delusion. Veiled amidst this email, which has clearly altered my frame of mind for this talk, is a word I've not heard before, but monk mara. And I'm not quite sure what that would allude to. If only Professor Dharma could just write straightforward questions and straightforward criticisms, I could respond accordingly, or direct them towards someone who can answer on my behalf. But that aside, and not completely aside, because it is applicable, divorce is very difficult. I know, I've experienced it, and more than once. But each time, and this was before I was a Buddhist practitioner, I chose to just walk away and start again. One can instruct one's solicitor, and I'm not giving legal advice or giving any advice pertaining relationships. In fact, we're prohibited from doing so. It's more to do with the formation of relationships and the breaking down of them. But relationship advice is not really within a monk's remit. But from my own experience, I simply walked away and expected nothing of that, and expected to just start again. So therefore, clean break settlement, you have nothing then further to do. If you still have young children, there are responsibilities for maintenance and such like. But this is just part of samsara or part of worldly life. It's only until they finish full-time education, or other arrangements can be made. As far as custody is concerned and problems that associate and all the emotional difficulties that one associates with that, yes, it's very hard. But ultimately also, your children too are not yours. We borrow our children for a very short time. They're not possessions. We're responsible in that biologically and chemically we created them. But it is their own karma that brought them into this world, and it is that that will motivate and drive them in whichever direction they go. Maybe they will choose, your children, as teenagers or as adults, to leave and divorce you as a parent, not in the sense of the word we understand it, but by going off to the other side of the world and ordaining as a bhikkhu or a bhikkhuni, renouncing worldly life, divorcing themselves of their family, their friends, their work life, all of their associations. That can also be emotionally upsetting for parents. Now, the Buddha put in place requirements for parents to give their permission in order that they have at least had a full understanding as to what their child, however old you are, even an adult has to get, if their parents are still alive, has to get their parents' written permission to go and ordain. I don't think it says in the Vinaya written permission, but these days it's usually expected that you have written permission just so that they're sure, in order that you fully explained and relinquished all of your responsibilities and family duties, and that they know you haven't been dragged off to join some weird cult somewhere who's brainwashed you. They have brainwashed you because they're cleaning your brain to make your mind pure. This is the nature of practice, but it has other connotations, the word brainwashing in English. And these are the kind of aspects of what I'm talking about that don't come across so clearly to the Professor Dharmas of this world, or the Professor Dharmas in this audience. Because I'm speaking to like-minded people when I say that, people whom are like me and far superior to me by way of their own education and even understanding of Dharma, whom I've lent on for support, lay practitioners who know the suttas in the past and even know and understand the Vinaya better than I did then. I've lent on them for support to assist me in my training, to assist me in my learning and personal development, to great benefit of, it's been of great benefit to myself that I've had that support. So I'm by no means belittling that. But when, from that standpoint, that basis, that position, I'm criticized for not knowing something that I haven't even talked about, because I haven't talked about it, but merely alluded to it by way of talking about something different that is more understandable to those that are listening, and coming from a place of my own experience, then I can't help but not take exception to it, but it's very difficult for me to reply. And sometimes it can be a little deflating and make you think, well, why bother? Why bother speaking at all? I'm only, after all, responding to comments mostly. And that I will always continue to do. But if it provokes negativity in anyone's perception, because I'm not applying every answer to each comment to a particular Pali verse, then you find, well, you feel that the words you're saying are not actually going to the right place, and you'd be better off just carrying on with your own practice. But I know that's not the case, because one email out of many that made me very happy, and we have a great correspondence, is by no means, an indicator of, but it is very much the other side of Buddhism. And what I was talking about the other day with too much religion, I called that talk, I think, in the end, or that questions and answer session, was really that. When Buddhism doesn't become Buddhism, doesn't become Sila Samadhi Panya, but becomes this organized religion where people all compete intellectually as to how clever they are with the questions they can ask. Competitive questioning. It used to be quite fashionable in the West, and now it's become so cliche it doesn't happen because it became so obvious that someone was asking a question just to show how much they know already, rather than to really genuinely ask about something they don't know. But monks of any stage of their practice, of any stage of their mental development, I'm speaking generally speaking, not about myself, should not be criticized over their academic achievements or their intellectual understanding of aspects of Dharma. Yes, they're going to be open to criticism with regards to any aspects of their behavioral nature and Vinaya, code of conduct. And that should go without saying, that there should never be cause for any criticism of that. So I think I've gone off the track a little bit there. We were talking about divorce. In basic terms, you could just walk away. That's it. And consider it as an opportunity, a new beginning, a new start. Unfortunately, the legal system can make that very difficult, but that is within your control. If you accept you were born into this world without anything, and you will leave this world without anything, then you can start now without anything. And all of your house, your cars, your children even, leave them behind. I don't mean that in a crass way. Your children will come to see you when they can, when they want to. You can remain in contact with them. You can let them know that you're available. Don't worry about legal issues or relationship problems being a barrier. That's very temporary, very impermanent. Those barriers soon break down, soon disappear, in a very short time indeed. So you've got the right idea, you approach it all mindfully. But if you can walk away and not try to retain or keep any of it, and maybe avoid getting into another relationship and having the same problem down the line, dedicating yourself to more practice, then that's the better way. I should get on with the comments and stop talking about Professor Dharma, but Professor Dharma's got in there somehow because I'm concerned that I might have offended them with my latest reply. But there we go. This person wants to start a 1 meal a day diet. I struggle to meditate as well. Have you got any tips on how to overcome hunger and also how the self-discipline to stick to the diet? Okay, it's not a diet, so to speak. We just refrain from eating in the afternoon. You can eat anything you like in the morning, but we refrain from eating in the afternoon. And as a lay practitioner, you don't need to do that. It won't help. If you've got work and a family life, it's difficult within that environment to fit in eating just in the morning. That's usually quite a busy time of day. It is the busy time of day for me in this monastic life because that's all I'm doing. The morning is all about food. After morning meditation and chanting, I go off on alms round collecting food. Then I'm back here eating food. Then I'm clearing up after food. And then I'm talking to you saying, thank you very much, Anumodana, for all the food that I've been offered and your kind support. So the morning up until noon is all about food. And the point of refraining from food in the afternoon is so as to have got all of that out of the way and then freeing your afternoon up for practice. And in that sense, if you choose to do that once a month or twice a month or maybe once a week by taking 8 precepts or just some of the 8 precepts, refraining from eating in the afternoon, then that's okay if it helps and it's supportive of your practice. But what's more important is your practice, that you are disciplined and able to meditate in the morning and in the afternoon, and not just after a meal. We shouldn't be meditating just after we've eaten, when the body's got all this digestion to do, unless we use that time, which is a very good time for walking meditation, just walking up and down, up and down, up and down. That is a way to assist and aid digestion, also stop you becoming lazy and sleeping after a meal in the afternoon, and also a good way of clearing the mind and practicing a form of meditation that the Buddha highly recommends. So I suggest to you, if you can, then I don't have any particular tips because you're not doing anything, you're just refraining from eating. If you become hungry, then maybe have a spoonful of honey, a spoonful of butter, a spoonful of oil, or a spoonful of sugar. They're the 4 chatu madhu, the 4 honeys. They're the 4 allowables we're allowed in the afternoon by way of tonics. And some people translate that to mean all kinds of things. In monasteries they use that as to mean cheese and all kinds of different snacks. But officially it's just a lump of sugar or a spoonful of honey, a bit of oil or a bit of butter, just to settle the tummy from those hunger pangs or any feelings of faintness. And in that sense, that's allowable things. They're the real physical aspects. But I mean, you rarely need to resort to that. Just drinking water is sufficient, or even you can drink tea, coffee, as long as it has no milk in it, with sugar. And that helps to just put something in the tummy to stop it rumbling. But we're better meditating on an empty tummy anyway, and it's just a case of building it up gradually. So begin with once a month, then twice a month, then once a week, and then maybe more days a week if you're able to do so. But most people living in worldly life with family commitments and work commitments are not able to forgo eating in the afternoon, simply because they don't have time in the morning to have a substantial meal. So it's not about eating so much less, you just have enough to eat all in one sitting in the morning. And it's perfectly sufficient to survive for another day. If it wasn't, I wouldn't be here now, because I've been doing that for more than 10 years and with no ill effects. In fact, for my age, I think I'm quite healthy. I'm told so. I've just had some tests, so I'm happy to say that I'm physically quite healthy in most respects for people at this age. And now my teeth have been repaired a bit. I can eat more easily that 1 meal a day without having to be picky over what it is I can chew and what I can't chew. So I'm really enjoying that new experience of a greater variety of choice. I can successfully eat a crisp tomato or crisp piece of cucumber or lettuce without the pain putting me off that idea. So that's expanded my diet enormously. And I have immense gratitude for all your support to enable all of that. Yes, so let me continue with these comments and questions. Now, when beggars and thugs and addicts are asking you for some change, for money, and I say I don't have it, it's a lie. But if I give them money, then they'll be asking me every day, and so on and so forth and so forth. You explain the problem of the situation you walk through. Don't say anything at all. We don't have white lies in Buddhism. There's no, I had to lie because otherwise they'd go and spend the money on drink. There is no need for you to say, I have no money. There is no need for you to speak at all. Now, if you can have some food to give those people, if you can't, then you just walk on by, walk through. Now, as you point out later, it's probably inadvisable anyway to give addicts money as opposed to food, because they most likely will use the money to buy alcohol or drugs. So we don't give them money. But you don't need to lie. You presumably aren't walking around with your money hanging around your neck. It's in your wallet or in your pockets, or these days, in your phones or on your cards or whatever. It's not something most people even have these days, money jingling, jangling around them in a big sack. So you can just walk on through without speaking at all. You don't need to make eye contact. That is not being cruel. It's being sensible. Your intention is to do them no harm. You know giving them money would do them harm. If you were to pass me and I was hungry, you could not give me money because I'm a bhikkhu. I can't accept it. But you can give me food. It's the same principle. The harm and damage of giving me money would be such that I would be breaking very serious precepts, but also we treat money in our alms bowl like a poisonous snake in a basket, in the bottom of a basket of goodies. So it's poisoned the whole lot, because as soon as you put your hand in and touch the money, you've got that choice of what you have, and that whole world of samsara and problems opens up. So although we don't use money, of course, yes, we do need certain things to be provided for us, and any online contributions in that nature go towards the Sangha for supporting us in such activities, but we don't have to handle money. And you can give to causes that look after the homeless, you can give to food banks, you can give to soup kitchens if you feel guilty about walking on by. So you're not washing your hands of responsibility and being uncharitable. You're acting wisely and cautionarily. But don't lie, then you're breaking a precept completely unnecessarily. And then here comes this old chestnut: reincarnation requires belief too. So it's not reincarnation, like I just said, it's the causes and conditions for rebirth, not of this soul even, not a soul. Just providing this, I don't know what's happening today behind me, but something. All that's going on, the causes and conditions you put in place in this lifetime are that for future rebirth. It's not reincarnation, that's an entirely different subject. And rebirth does not require belief, but understanding. Understanding doesn't even necessarily mean that you accept it will happen. In fact, the practice is to become free from suffering in this lifetime and rebirth. So we're not looking for a good rebirth. We don't want rebirth. We're looking to be free from rebirth into samsara. Free from that burden of cycle of aging, sickness and death. I hope you can hear me okay. I think I can hear the background noises today more than you probably. And this is I've been following the 5 Silas for quite some time, but sometimes, especially in the summer, my life feels boring, so I'm drinking and smoking again, and my life is more exciting, at least in my head. It sounds silly, but it's true. I also sometimes wonder if that's so. Yes, it sounds silly, but it's true. You're either keeping the precepts or you're not. And the 5th precept is you don't take intoxicants. Smoking cigarettes, it's fine. It's if that's what you're referring to. If you're smoking marijuana, it's an intoxicant. Nicotine is a stimulant, not an intoxicant. I don't want to open up that can of worms for discussion again, because we've spoken about it so much. But alcohol, intoxicants, are breaking the 5th precepts, which can lead to breaking the other precepts. If you're resorting to drinking and smoking because you're bored, it's because you're not practicing correctly. You have a wife and children, so you're living in a family, you have responsibilities and duties, but you can set aside time to practice meditation, like I'm always saying, in the morning when you wake up, and in the evening just before you go to sleep. When temptation arises to drink, you have to know that as wanting to really forget your practice and do something completely different. It is not on the path. There is no room for breaking the 5th precept here or any place in Buddhism. It's as simple as that. So, I mean, you're called Venerable so-and-so. I don't know why. That might be just a name in your writing. And there's a picture of a monk. I'm sure you're not a monk. And Venerable is usually referring to monks. And you've got a wife and children. But the principle being that even lay people should be refraining from intoxicants, because it is one of the 5 precepts, and there are only 5. Now, I know some lay practitioners have their own ideas about maybe occasional glass of wine or occasional glass of beer is okay, or certain family occasions. That's up to you. But then don't ask me to explain why you're bored, why you're frustrated, why life seems so much better in your 20s, and then all the rest of this list of problems that you're presenting before me as a result of your drinking and smoking. Because all I can say is, it's because you're drinking and smoking. Because that's what happens. You get bored and life becomes unbearable if you drink and smoke. Now, I know you say you're drinking and smoking because you're bored. That's because you're not meditating. Meditation in itself can be seen boring, but only when it isn't practiced. Initially, it's difficult, so it's not boring. It's physically a challenge. When you get used to that, the mind starts creating all sorts of distractions. That cannot be considered as boring. When you truly are faced with what you consider to be boring, then comes the question, what is boredom? What do I mean by boring? Is it wanting something other than this that I have? Or is it not wanting this that I have? Is that boring? If you can answer it, and there's no answer, there's nothing there, you've got emptiness, you've got nothing there for any concern, and that would not be considered as boring. But of course, clouding all of this right view, all of this understanding, is intoxication. So any question listing all of these problems on the basis of taking intoxicants can be answered, well, refrain from intoxicants, keep those 5 precepts. And what is the point if to live is to suffer? So this is not the teachings of the Buddha. The Buddha teaches there is suffering. We don't live to suffer. We live to enjoy to the maximum this opportunity of being born, fortunately, into this human realm for all the suffering that there is an immense amount of joy and happiness and contentment that can be found through this very practice. The practice is to understand that there is suffering, the cause of suffering, but there's an end of suffering and the path leading to the end of suffering. So that's the point. We're not here to suffer. The point is to become free from suffering in this lifetime. And I think you then qualify that comment by saying, you understand that, but is it realistically, most of us will never fully reach that end. Most of you, if you meditate, will see that end. If not attain to freedom of suffering in this lifetime permanently, you will experience moments of freedom from suffering. Moments of clarity, moments of emptiness, glimpses of nibbana. So the practice, this life, is not about suffering, it's to understand suffering, and that we are the cause of suffering through greed, hatred and delusion. Our desires fueling the fires. Our desires the cause of suffering. But not desire, wholesome desire, chanda, for development of the purity of mind, wholesome mind states, and eradication of unwholesome mind states, but freedom from unwholesome desire, tanha, which is just thirst, craving, leading to addiction, such as the previous correspondent whom was asking about falling back on drink all of the time. That's an unquenchable thirst that also leads to mindlessness as opposed to mindfulness. Clarity of understanding in all of our activities and seeing clearly the nature of all characteristics of this existence, which I've also, I think, covered today in this talk. So I think that's nearly the end of these. I think one final comment, what do I think about Jainism? Well, I don't think about Jainism as I don't think about any other religions. Jainism predates Buddhism and it has very many similarities. But if you remember, the Buddha explains to us in the initial teachings, the Dhammacakka Sutta, the middle way, the middle path. And Jainism was very much on the other side of the path, the ascetic side, with some very extreme. I've been and visited Jain monasteries in India, a number of them actually, but they have some very harsh ascetic practices and strange rites and rituals. I say strange, they're actually very functional and very practical, and there's nothing wrong with Jainism. It's very pure, but it's very difficult to observe, and therefore with all of those extra unnecessary rules, like for instance plucking all of the hairs out of the body. There's no logical sense behind that. Walking around naked for part of the time, there's no logical sense behind that. Whereas the Buddha saw a lot of those ascetic practices as being able to be left to find the middle way, and Buddhism became Buddhism as a result of establishing what the middle path is. So not the life of asceticism, not the life of luxury, but the middle way. So that's all I think about. It's just too far the other way on towards asceticism. And if you go too far the other way with asceticism, as the Buddha experienced over 6 years of ascetic practices, fully emaciated, living on 1 grain of rice a day, you are unable to practice in terms of develop good states of jhana, enjoyable meditation, leading to glimpses of, and ultimately parinibbana, but glimpses of nibbana. It would be suffering, and there is no point in that, as the Buddha teaches us. So that's, I don't think about that or other religions, because all that's necessary for me to think about is this practice. Like I don't need to think about how all of the suttas are worded from start to finish. But the meaning of them all is very important. And that understanding is what I hold in my heart, which will stay there long after everything else is forgotten. and hopefully is developed as a quality of wisdom, panya, as in the first step of the Noble Eightfold Path. So on that note, I hope there's something useful in there for you, and if not, just let it go. And to all the Professor Dharmas out there, there's no need to try and explain to me where I'm going completely wrong. The Sangha is there to support me in that respect. Senior monks, even junior monks to me, that have a full and comprehensive understanding of the Tipitaka, I can refer to directly as my teachers for any explanations I need, and they are able to admonish me on any areas of my conduct where I might be going wrong. That is the structure and nature of the Sangha. It is not for dharmacharyas or lay people or really junior monks to go around criticizing other monastics or the Sangha in general for the way they teach, unless they're in breach of any Vinaya rules, when they should bring it to the attention of the necessary authorities or whatever is in place in the structure within the country where they are. So on that note, until next time, be happy and stay well. Sukhi Hotu.